going to give you a quick overview of archaeology in a couple of videos here. Again, these are designed to take advantage of as much or as little as you want, and watching none of those will not put you at a disadvantage to your trip, but looking at some of them can help in being able to understand and track some of the more complicated aspects of archaeology and studying the land. So, in simple, I want to give you some definitions. And this is from a course that I would teach at North Point Bible College called Archaeology in the Bible. So first definition I want to introduce to you is a layer. Layer is basically designates a level of earth, ash, stone, or other material. It's successive to other layers. Now in Israel, you have all over the place these unnatural looking mounds known as tells. Now if I wanted to use the word in Hebrew for a hill, a natural hill, I would use the word har. But these are called tells in Hebrew, and the reason is that they have their own name is because the ancient world did not have bulldozers, dumpsters, landfills, or any of the such, recycling bins. What they did was when a city became, or a section of it became overrun, city was burnt, maybe destroyed by war, they would collapse it in on itself and then use it as a heightening level and build on top of it again. And so this makes Israel and the ancient world very, very rich for archaeology, because basically you can just take a knife and cut down the middle of it and see all of the different layers that have taken place here. And so again, that's what we're speaking of as layers. Each of these would be successive layers of civilization, and just as you can tell the difference between a style of a car from the 1970s, 80s, or maybe 50s and 60s because of the way it's designed, so many of the styles of pottery, construction techniques, roads, etc., all give away who was occupying this particular city at what particular time. So in archaeology, we call that a layer. And you can see here from a section of a tell that's dug that, some of them are actual ash layers, and another section here has a wall going through the middle of it. So the archaeologist's work is really to deconstruct what's there, clean it up, mark everything, and try to rebuild it accordingly. Now, once you reach the bottom of a particular layer, that's called the floor. So, say for instance, like in the city of Arad, where in the south part there was an ancient temple discovered, they dug down and began to hit this floor, and they knew that they hit the floor to the layer. So what they did is attempted to reconstruct everything they found in this layer, and sure enough, when they reverse engineered it, they reconstructed this whole temple with the altar of sacrifice on the far right, a little Holy of Holies section with material that's inside the Israeli Museum and on site there today. We won't be going to the southern part of the nation, but on our extra day, my intention is to take any of you who wish to the Israeli Museum, and we can look at a ton of artifacts. Now, a stratum is a layer of occupation. You might have a layer that is not necessarily occupied, but a stratum is a section that was occupied. It was habitation. And so here in the city of Megiddo, which we will visit, which is at the base of Mount Carmel, you can see a certain technique that they used. They took a slice out of the hill like a cake, and that's called stratigraphy, where you look at the stratum, the different levels, to see what's there. And there was a picture of this a little bit better over here to just kind of see sideways what's going on. And so that's one major method in archaeology called stratigraphy, that you would just cut a line to get an idea of the overall view, and then you would begin to do what's called the box method, where you would cut up these little boxes, you dig down until you hit a floor or got to the level that you desired, and then you would reconstruct what was there, and so on and so forth. Now, in this layer of occupation, this stratum, once they discover a level worth excavating and examining, you get, for instance, at the city of Megiddo, a whole ancient Canaanite temple to pagan god and a circular altar that they were able to reconstruct, which we'll be seeing when we stop at Megiddo. And sometimes an area isn't necessarily destroyed, but it's retasked. And that's what happened in the case of this area. And so you've got some things built right over or right through or right next to another layer. And that's very common in time of post-war. When a city's abandoned, it's a bit destroyed, and then somebody, builds an oven right up against a section of a building that it doesn't make sense, but it's just they're using it for that time period. A phase, you could basically consider like the phases of use, like what's an easy way to understand this? Different owners in the same home. Right now we came into a house that was owned by the people who have a restaurant in town, the Krugers. But that was the Kruger phase of the house we live in. Now it's the Conway phase. It's the occupation of a particular level. And so you see this with the Israelites. They come in and they occupy the land of the Canaanites. In the case of, say, Jericho, they destroy the city, but many of the cities they simply retasked. And that would be a different phase where you don't destroy the level, but you just simply engage it for your own purposes. A different group of people engage it. The idea that the Israelites took over a lot of Canaanite cities also explains why there isn't this really hard, distinct phase of Israelite pottery between the Canaanites and the Israelites. So much so that a lot of archaeologists say that the Israelites were Canaanites. But if you showed up in a house and somebody gave it to you and it came fully furnished, you might change out some things, but you wouldn't throw everything out, especially if you had no furniture. Think of the young couples that we all know that step into a furnished apartment. They would consider that a blessing. That's really what the Israelites did. They walked into a furnished nation. And so the phase didn't destroy all of the Canaanite things that were there, certainly the idolatrous ones, but it switched over into an Israelite phase without interrupting or destroying a lot of what was there. Now, at other times, somebody might need to put up a wall, and it's a phase in an area. This is a wall by the southern end of Jerusalem, but you see Crusader stones, you see Herodian stones from the time of Herod, Hasmonean stones. Basically, they needed a wall up to defend it, and they just grabbed whatever was available. Sometimes you'll see that as a different phase where clearly, obviously, these stones weren't made for this area, but they're using it in this phase. They're retasking it. Here is the Church of the Nativity in Bethlehem, which hopefully we'll have a chance to get to. And you can see there was a phase where the door was completely open, but for some reason they closed it. The specific reason is because during the Arab period, the Arabs were killing Christians, destroying churches, and they wanted to prevent horsemen from being able to ride directly in, something that the Arabs and the Crusaders did in Jerusalem with many openings like this one here in the southern part of the temple, where we'll be able to see this actually up close. But along with that, say for instance you have a whole layer that you've dug up. It's a Israelite layer, but there are different sections to a house, different buildings in the area. Each of those areas is called a locus. A locus is a particular area of working. So if as an archaeologist we're digging up, say, this church complex, this is from a city called Tel Hippus, and say I'm working over in this area right here, it's got several locations, 565, 578, 579. So each of these are specific locations that are being excavated and examined, and that is what, in archaeological terms, a locus is. It's a area, a region. And so you would be in charge of those locations if they were part of your dig. And Luzinanti, in fact, was part of one of these excavations, and he was working on a locus area, and excavating it. And so whenever you're digging, you might find something. And so in order to keep track of those things, you create what's called a find number. So say I'm digging up here in this area. I would write in the archaeology journal, I was digging at locus 565. I keep track of each bucket of dirt I took up, or they call them baskets just because that's what they used to use back in the beginnings of archaeology in the early 1900s. So you keep number of the locus, the area you're digging, the basket you dug up. Say, for instance, we find a coin at locus 565, and it was my 5th basket, but it's the first thing I found in that area. I would write L565, locus 565 was my area. B5, it was the 5th basket of dirt that I sifted out. And F1 would be the find because it's the first thing that I found. And so this is how archaeologists keep track of things. And when you're digging up stuff, I'll tell you what, if you don't do this, it's easy to lose track. And they have to be able to put everything back the way they found it. So this can be a very meticulous, analytical, and detailed endeavor. And of course, you have levels, each layer, each find, each wall is given a vertical measurement, and so the levels are marked out like this picture right here, where they see where it changes, something different about each section. It's a different level. They'll be marked, and this is in the method of stratigraphy, where you look at the wall sideways and examine all of the different things that are going on. Here's a pit with some burnings. Here's some, looks like lime or limestone bricks here that are different from stones there. So you can clearly see different civilization and things going on. Now the second method, the first one is stratigraphy. The second method is called the box method. And the box method, to show you what that looks like, you basically dig you grid out a whole area, and you'll leave a dirt wall so that you can walk and look down, you can climb in and look up, you can do the stratigraphy like this inside these boxes. In fact, this picture is from inside one of these boxes. Specifically, I believe it's right there. And so you're able to examine this so that when the time comes, you remove all the dirt and you're able to begin to reconstruct it. And that is called the box method, for the method of the squares in the boxes. And so a lot more information here than we have time. Hope that helps you. I tell you what, the aspects of archaeology, now we have what's called Google archaeologists. Now this is a much older picture from the air of Capernaum, but you can see many of the unexcavated sections of the city yet to be discovered and dug out at that time. We have people who are making discoveries using Google Images and Google Maps, and they call them couch archaeologists or Google archaeologists. And along with this, you have many different things at work: photographers, scientists, botanists, analysis of animal bones, and that, I mean, there's just about, you'd be surprised at the people that are hired and the things that they do at an archaeology site. So that's just some general introduction to archaeological terms. Probably absolutely have nothing transformative for your life, but if you pick up a issue of Biblical Archaeology Reviewer, you begin to engage some books of archaeology and they use these terms, you'll be able to track it a little bit easier. That's it.